Hello, and welcome to Armenian Enough, a podcast about life and identity in the diaspora, with your host, Lara Vanian-Green.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Armenian Enough. I'd like to start by thanking our monthly Patreon donors of $5 or more. And I just want to let you know that we do record in advance. So if for some reason I don't mention your name today, I probably will next time. I would like to express my deep gratitude today for the following supporters: Talar Keosian, Monica Dadivanian, Elisa Aslanian Zamora, Anna Darian, who's also my co-host on our monthly Zoom meetups, Narine Hagopian, Marguerite Sagatelian, Lori Yetarian, Natalie Arshakian, Justin Muradian, my friend Ara Babayan, my dad Ara Kasparian, my very good friend Emma Shanavian, and my good friend Aaron Carr. Thank you so much for supporting us. It really helps us to meet our basic monthly expenses, and it allows us to keep having these important conversations. And it means a lot to me personally, so thank you. Today's guest is someone who helps us take a look at our own imperfections and laugh at ourselves, which I find very healing. He is a native Angelino of Armenian and British descent who has been acting and writing since the tender age of 9. Most of you were probably introduced to him via his YouTube video, Shit Armenian Girls Say. Is it cursing if that's actually the name of the piece? Anyway, that video has garnered 444,000 views so far. He has been nominated for 2 LA Weekly Web Awards for his cutie pie videos on YouTube, and recently starred in the film Sex and the Future, available now on streaming and on demand. Welcome to the show, Andy Kenareki.
Hello. How's it going?
Hi. So you did a movie? What did you do?
I did. Well, the title of the movie, I do want to just start off by saying it is not a pornography.
Thank you for clearing that up.
We did shoot in the Valley, but it is not a porn. So I just want to clear that up. I did a movie in 2018. It's an independent comedy film. It's sort of like, how can I describe it? It's like Coming to America, but Middle Eastern, but then also mixed in with like Black Mirror and American Pie. So there's like a lot of sex jokes. There's a whole tech component about it. It's basically about this Middle Eastern prince from a fictional country that's supposed to be like Dubai/Ibiza. So it's like Middle East, but like sexy and party place. It's very wacky. I definitely suggest drinking something while watching it.
Okay. Where can we get it on demand?
It's on Amazon Prime. It's on Apple Movies. Like basically anywhere where you would rent a movie online or through your TV, it's available.
Now I'm wishing I had watched it before interviewing you, but I did not have the chance to. But I promise this weekend.
Yeah, we'll just cancel and come back to this. How about that?
Maybe we'll have to record a little extra. All right, so let's start with our first question, which is always the same. Tell us a little bit about your background and the role that Armenian culture played in your upbringing.
Yeah, well, I was born and raised in the LA area in Glendale, which, as we know, is the biggest Armenian population outside of Armenia. My dad is Armenian from Iran, so he's Farskahai. And my mom is British. She's from just outside London. So basically half of my family are blonde hair, blue-eyed, and the other half are dark and Armenian, which is very interesting for family reunions and photos. Yeah, it just looks like a bunch of Italians and then like a bunch of like German people. It's very, very funny. In terms of being Armenian contributed to my life, I mean, it's interesting because I never spoke Armenian with my dad, but my grandma lived with us from when I was born to about 13 or 14 years of age, and she only spoke Armenian. So that was like a big part of my growing up because my mom was a working mom. So she kind of was like she would raise me and my brother. She would like get us from school, cook, clean, do all that kind of stuff. And that was like a big part of my life when she was alive and was taking care of us. And then obviously, like, so many of my friends were Armenian. So many of my classmates were Armenian and coworkers because Glendale's like 40% Armenian.
Yeah. So you didn't go to an Armenian school, but your classmates, by virtue of being in Glendale, Armenian.
Yeah, I never went to Armenian school. But yeah, at least like 35 to 40% of the classmates I had were Armenian.
Does your mom speak any Armenian?
She knows a few words, but she actually speaks Farsi.
Oh.
Yeah, so when my parents met in Iran in the 70s, my dad didn't speak any English. My mom didn't speak any Armenian. I don't know how they communicated. Body language, I suppose. I don't know. But yeah, they hit it off, and my mom helped teach my dad English, and my dad helped teach her Farsi. So when we were kids, if they ever wanted to talk about something that they didn't want us to know about, they would speak to each other in Farsi.
Interesting. So is Farsi your dad's first language?
I think Armenian is because he went to an Armenian school in Iran.
Okay.
But he speaks it fluently. He speaks Farsi fluently.
Do you speak any?
Just bad words.
Good. You learned the important stuff. Awesome.
Yeah, just the most important stuff for when you're driving and you don't want the other person to know what you've said when they've cut you off.
That is very important. Oh my God. You just reminded me of this story. It's not that funny, but I remember when I was in elementary school and also in Glendale, but it was the early 80s, so not like as Armenian as it is right now. And every once in a while, we would get curious elementary school students to say, like, teach me some words or teach me how to say something in Armenian. And I would always teach them, yes, Eshem. And I thought it was hilarious to...
I feel like every kid has done that.
Really? Okay, good. Because
Yeah.
I'm like, that doesn't sound like me today.
No, I definitely did that to somebody. Well, but then, like, I think we tried teaching one of our substitute teachers that. So obviously, so I think in like third grade, one of my teachers got pregnant. And so she left for half the school year. So we had a sub who was not from the Glendale area. And so she was like, oh, I want to know Armenian. And we told her that, and she eventually picked up on it really quickly and got like so angry with the class.
Oh my.
Yeah, she got so angry. But we were like, sorry, like whatever, we're in third grade.
It's like that scene in My Big Fat Greek Wedding, right? Where he teaches the guy wants to learn how to say something in Greek, and they teach him something really inappropriate to say in front of the family and the in-laws. But
yeah,
anyway,
exactly that.
So who's the funny person in your family besides you? Because I find humor usually comes from somewhere.
Yeah, nobody in my family. So both my parents are musicians, and a lot of their other relatives are on both sides are musical. I was like the first one who is artistic, but not with music really. So nobody was like professionally doing comedy, but I think every one of my family members is funny in their own way. Like they're not trying to be funny. They just like are naturally funny with their opinions and how they present themselves. Like my dad, I wouldn't say is somebody with like a great sense of humor, but just the way that he talks about things and the way that he complains about things is so funny.
So I think you just see the humor in it.
Yeah, but I also think it's just that, I mean, you would probably know this too, like, it's that, you know, like when Armenians complain about something, even when you're like annoyed, there's something just funny about it. Like, it's just when Armenians complain about something, there's like the way they talk about it is so colorful and they're so agitated and like so volcanic that it's just funny.
I'm reminded of when I went to my first Armenian wedding with my husband and with my now husband. I think we were just dating at the time, and my mom was there. It was a cousin's wedding or something. And besides being thrilled that there were bottles of actual alcohol on every single table, he really enjoyed the wedding and the festivities. But my mom participated in the Armenian tradition of tearing the wedding apart, right? Asinche, this is too loud. You call this food. And my husband was so offended. Like, this is a beautiful wedding. What is wrong with your mom? And I was like, no. This is Armenian tradition.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It would be strange if someone didn't tear the wedding apart.
Yeah,
I don't know why. Because you said Armenians complaining. That's why I remembered that.
Yeah, I feel like if an Armenian doesn't complain about something, that means that the wedding was terrible.
Really?
Yeah, maybe. I feel like maybe it's like a jealousy thing of like, oh, it was beautiful, the food was good, but like that one nazuk I had was so dry. And you're like, oh, okay. Like, clearly you're just jealous, you know?
That is pretty funny. So what drew you into the world of acting and comedy besides the fact that your parents are artists? Like, what did you find compelling about that? Or maybe did you have a comedian or something that you admired?
I wish I had like a cool story about like, oh, I went to see a play or I saw a movie and that like inspired me. I just, for whatever reason, ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to be an actor. It's just, I don't even know where it came from. I don't remember being inspired by anything. It just was like something that I was saying to people before I think I really knew what it was. It just was like some kind of weird thing that was already in me.
So how did you get into, like, what was the process to get into writing and acting? Those are different skills.
Yeah, very different. So I just started off with acting as a kid. I did like a lot of plays, a lot of community theater, auditioned for community plays, things like that, and took acting classes, was in drama all throughout middle school and high school, just always was in drama classes and always in like the school plays, and did community theater with this group called Stepping Stone Players that are in Glendale. Every summer they would do like a big musical and include people from the community, people from the different schools and businesses. And it was like a combination of like professional actors as well as people who just were like, I want to do something for the summer. So that was a really cool experience because it was just, instead of just laying around for the summer, you're like working really hard on this big musical. And that was definitely like a big growing point for me because I realized I was able to do more than I thought in terms of musical theater because I did West Side Story when I was 16 years old, which is a very difficult, if I tried to do that now, I'd be like, oh my God, everything hurts. Like, what am I doing? It's a very strenuous musical. Yeah. And I met a lot of really incredible friends from that musical. And then I just kept doing it. And then I guess you could say I started writing when Shit Armenian Girls Say came out. That was like the first time that I was actually writing stuff.
What inspired that video?
So that entire video, and I think everything that's happened since then, has been a complete and total fluke. It completely just by accident. Like I never would have guessed any of that, you know? Basically around that time, there was a video that came out on YouTube called, and this was like the heyday of YouTube before like TikTok, Instagram, all that stuff. YouTube was like the thing. And there was a video that came out called Shit Girls Say. And this one like comedian, I think in New York, came up with it. And he did a couple videos like that. And that inspired people to make other videos. So then they started making like Shit Black Girls Say, Shit Mexican Girls Say, shit anybody says, you know, like I've even seen like shit Nordstrom's customers say, like just like random things. So
I know that we've reached a record for the number of times shit has been said on this podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's going to just keep going up, I think, because it's just starting.
Sorry, go ahead.
So a friend of mine was like, you should do a Shit Armenian Girls Say. And I didn't know anything about YouTube. I didn't know anything about filming. I didn't have any experience in that. And I was driving to another friend's house that night up in the hills in Glendale, like near GCC. And for whatever reason, like all these lines just started popping into my head. Like, does hookah have calories? I want to name my daughter Melania, which I take credit for Melania Trump being first lady. That's because I made that happen, apparently.
As well you should.
Yes, I made her. Anyways, so yeah, all these lines just kept coming into my head, and I got to my friend's house and I was like, I need a piece of paper. I need to write this down. I did not have a fancy phone back then that I could just talk into it now like I do. So I just started writing everything on this piece of paper and got a bunch of lines, and then called a friend of mine who does videography. And I was like, could we film this? I don't know how we would do this. And she's like, yeah, totally. So we filmed it in her sister's backyard and around her house in Pasadena. Filmed it in like 2 hours. I borrowed a really crappy wig from a friend of mine and then just like random clothes from my mom's closet and just filmed it. And then she edited it that night. And I just created a YouTube account and called it Andy K Comedy, which in retrospect, I wish I would have thought of a better name. But I didn't know anything about YouTube. And uploaded it and it just kind of blew up. It was kind of crazy to watch. I wasn't expecting anything and it kind of blew up.
I know, like you're getting up to almost 500,000 views. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And I remember seeing that probably shortly after it came out, but I didn't really connect it. Like I remember that video, and I didn't realize that was you doing it, but that was pretty funny.
Oh, thanks.
And then your character blossomed.
Yeah, it was just gonna be. I did a part 2 as well because people were like, part 2, part 2. So I did the part 2, and then I was like, okay, I can't just keep doing shit Armenian girls say, but I know that I want to keep doing something. So it was never meant to just be, it was always meant to just be those 2 videos. And then I was like, well, let's just keep going and see what happens. This can't just be like a random girl. She's got to be a character, right? She has to have a name. She has to have a whole backstory. And that's when I came up with Ani Mazotyan.
Yes. But we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
How dare you? How dare you, sir?
It is a love letter to people.
Okay, so for those of you who don't speak Armenian, mazod means hairy, which is lovely pursuit. Oh, man. So her name is Ani? I thought it was Cutie Pie.
So Cutie Pie is her nickname. So
I see.
The way Cutie Pie came about is also very random. When I was in middle school, there was a group of like the popular girls. And they were who were all Armenian, and they were in my math class because we were in like the stupid kid math class because we were terrible at math. So we were in that math class, like struggling, not giving a crap because I hate math. And they kept, for whatever reason, these girls for one semester kept referring to each other and the guys that they liked as food. So they'd be like, oh, I love Artin, he's my caramel. Oh, I love Lucina, she's my ice cream. Oh my god, I love Derek, he's my chocolate. And I was like, what the f*** are these people talking about? Like, what are you girls talking about? And that always stuck in my head, and I was like, Cutie Pie, well, who is now Cutie Pie, would totally have been that person.
That's funny.
Yeah, and just with the way she talks, it's QD with a D instead of
yes.
T-I-E. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of social commentary you do in your comedy.
Apparently, I didn't think it was, but now looking back, I realize that it was. Yeah, that it is. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you feel like, I mean, a lot of people are attracted to acting and even comedy because you have a license to be things and people and say things that you maybe wouldn't normally say as yourself. Do you feel that way?
Definitely. I mean, I'm already like a pretty outspoken person. I think the thing with comedy is it allows us to, besides just laughing and, laughter is the best medicine. Besides that, it allows commentary. It's kind of smooths over the commentary. Like you're able to talk about things that are really kind of pushing the buttons or talking about things that people don't want to talk about in a way that isn't so like an attacking way. And I think you see with the best comedians like Dave Chappelle, for example, who I think is brilliant. He's able to talk about things that in a normal conversation around the dinner table, you'd be like, we can't talk about this. This is like too emotional. We want to have a nice dinner, or like you wouldn't talk about that to a stranger, right? Because that's like, oh, we can't do that. But through comedy and through the way that he does it, for example, he's able to kind of go there and make people think about it because it's done in a funny way. And I think one of the main reasons that we laugh at anything is because there's some truth in it.
That's very true.
Right. It's even if it's like an extreme version of it, there's some truth in there. And that's what makes you laugh about it.
No, that is very true. And I think when we were talking earlier, I told you that that's how I like to take in my nightly news is via the comedians, via like Daily Show or Stephen Colbert or something, because it makes it, I mean, right now we're fine, but the last 4 years were unpalatable, and it kind of made it easier to tolerate, making fun of it, making light of it. But I wanted to pivot to Armenian culture and comedy because I find that comedy is one of those things that is so culture specific. And I've said this before, like I don't find Armenian jokes typically to be funny. I don't find Armenian sense of humor to be funny. And I think that's a testament to me being sort of very American. I like British sense of humor very much, but Armenian sense of humor, it's like, somebody will tell me this joke with a lot of enthusiasm, and I'm like, yeah. And they're like, no, that. I'm like, no, I understand it. It's just not funny. So that's my personal commentary, but we're not exactly known as a people for being able to make fun of ourselves. So how do you think you got around that?
It's interesting because, like, so I think Armenians are some of the funniest people, but again, like, I think Armenian jokes are often like dad jokes, right? So it's like, like that, where you're like, oh, okay, I get it, but like, that's like, it's almost like the ketchup joke, like mommy tomato, papa tomato, baby tomato. Like, a lot of Armenian jokes are kind of like that. So normally I'm like, okay, whatever, but I think Armenians, just the way that they naturally, like the culture, the way that they go through the world, and the way that they talk about certain things when they're not trying to be funny, that's what makes them so funny. Because they're just so expressive. That. Yeah. Almost like Italians, like they're just so expressive, and that just is funnier, Whereas British humor is more commentary. It's more like, wit in the way that they speak about certain things, whereas for Armenians, it's just the way that they operate. It's just funny. But yeah, I think that is a good point. Like, I definitely do think that there tends to be people getting their backs up a little bit when it comes to making fun of the Armenian community. I think you kind of have to just go there, because I found that the people who are the most successful when it comes to comedy in the Armenian community, they just go there and, they're ballsy about it and just kind of no fear and just go for it. And I think you kind of have to do that in general with comedy, because if somebody is not going to laugh at you, they're not going to laugh at you no matter what. So why try to come in at a C-? Go for the A+, because the person who doesn't like it is not going to like it no matter what. And I think Armenians do respect when somebody just kind of goes there. And again, it's about the truth. So if they do laugh, they're laughing because they know there's some truth in there.
Do you think there's a generational difference in people that find it funny versus people who don't?
Yes, I definitely think there's a generational difference. I think the younger generation, or the ones who have been here for a longer period of time, I think they're probably more open. Again, I'm generalizing, but I definitely think for older people, there's more of a barrier up. And I think maybe that just has to do with being more of an immigrant generation and always having to kind of keep your walls up and kind of be on alert, which I totally understand. I feel like maybe they can never truly be relaxed. That's just kind of my reading of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. They have a different perspective on it.
Yeah, it's just definitely a little bit different. I mean, I will say, like, for being a people who maybe are more defensive, definitely very defensive about their culture and tradition, most of the people who follow me and watch my stuff are Armenian.
Who are the Armenian comics that you really like or maybe even admire?
I love Big Bad Armo Show. I think they're really funny. I mean, like, knock on wood, I'd love to do something with them one day. But I love just all the different characters that they do. I obviously love Mary Basmagian. I've done a couple things with her, and I think she's so funny.
She's really funny.
Yeah, and she also, she gets it. She gets that. She goes there, which is what I love about her. She just goes there and is so fearless on her commentary and what she does. And I just love that, because I think, and especially for a woman, like, let's just call it for what it is, the Armenian community can often not be the most pro-female place. And she just, as a woman, fucking goes for it. And I love that. Yeah, those are the two that I don't really follow a ton of Armenian comics, but I tend to like the sketch comedy more. Because I think they're, again, like, just the way Armenians operate and move through the world is so funny, especially the older people, that there's already a character built for you, and all you have to do is just inhabit that and add to it.
I also think, actually, that Vahe Berberian's comedy is really poignant in a similar way to Dave Chappelle in some ways, and that it's like social commentary that is, directed to make the audience laugh and think at the same time. And I'm kind of surprised that he's able to get away with all the things that he gets away with. And when I asked him, he said it's because his audience knows in most part, I mean, some people do get offended no matter what, but that his audience knows that he's coming from a good place. Yeah. He's coming from a well-meaning place. Yeah, and that's the thing with comedy is, I mean, there's definitely, like, some comics that are just downright mean, and I don't think that they're often the most successful, because I think people do it just intuitively know
what's a joke and what's not a joke. I think you can just kind of tell from whatever energy you're getting. But, all of the criticisms, if you want to call it that, it's commentary truly, they do come from a good place. And again, it's like comedy is something Joy Behar said. She said, comedians are the philosophers of our time in a lot of ways, because we obviously do go and watch a professor speak, but people watch, now with Netflix and stuff, there's so many comedy specials, like every day there's a new one, and people watch those and they're hearing somebody projecting their view of the world out there. And the reason they're laughing is because they're going, oh, I totally get what she's talking about or what he's talking about. Even if it's not something in their life, they totally get it. And I think Ali Wong is really good at that.
She's great.
Yeah, Ali Wong she's incredible.
I think that there's also something that even if you don't know on a scientific basis that laughter is healing, I think that you intuitively know it or feel it. It's just the release of all the endorphins and that feel good. I really do think it's healing.
Oh, yeah. I think, if you just think about it, like if you've had like an evening where you're with a bunch of friends and let's say you're having a bottle of wine or whatever, and you're just laughing the whole time, you feel like you almost feels like a workout afterwards. Like you've accomplished something, even though you've just been like partying or having a good time. Like you've definitely released those endorphins, as you said, like you just release those hormones, and it is very healing. Like it's incredible to feel that. I'm always impressed by people who, when they're going through a really difficult time, that's when they laugh the most, because they know that is the best way for them to deal with what they're going through. Yes.
I'm a huge fan of dark comedy too, to be able to laugh about things that are just...
Me too. Me too.
Have you ever gotten negative reactions to your work?
Every single day.
No, are you serious?
Oh my God, yeah, every single day.
What do people object to?
It's interesting. So when the first video came out, 99% of people got it. They're laughing at it. And by the way, most of them, it was a lot of guys, but it's a lot of girls. Like the people that I'm not really making fun of. I'm not actually making fun of people. That's not the point of what I do. But the people you would think I was making fun of, if you thought that was criticism, they watch my stuff the most. So again, they get it. But I had some people message me from, just the comment section on the YouTube videos, people who were like, oh, this is really destructive for our community. One of the comments I got, which I thought was hilarious, was somebody was like, this video is currently being used by the government of Turkey as propaganda against the Armenian government. And I was like, whoa, okay, like, you're giving me
You're like, I'm not getting any royalties.
No, and I was like, what makes you think that the government of Turkey gives two craps about my YouTube video that I filmed in someone's backyard in Pasadena? Like, what? Like, where is this coming from? Yeah, just comments like that, comments about like, oh, you're destroying our cult, like just like all the problems are me because I'm making a silly video. It's just like, oh, you're dragging us down through the dirt, just things like that, which it's like, all right, you're giving me way too much credit at this point.
Were there any homophobic comments about you being dressed in drag, essentially, even though it was like very lazy drag, but drag nevertheless?
Yeah, there was a couple at the beginning. Most people understood it because, they've watched Mrs. Doubtfire and, all that. Like, people get it. And again, I wasn't like, I just put on a wig. I didn't even shave. I still had facial hair,
Yeah.
I would say most of the homophobic comments came much later when people found out that I personally am gay. That's when it started.
Oh,
yeah.
What kind of, I was going to say what kind of comments, but I don't even really want to know. Like, that's just, I can't believe that people would message you about that.
Oh,
no, I can. I take it back. I can.
Yeah. Just like comments like something's wrong with you. You're disgusting. All the words that you would expect. Yeah, I'll be honest, like those comments don't actually get to me. I'm more worried about like the younger kids who are watching, who maybe they are questioning or they are gay or they have a friend or family member who is like, they're just much more vulnerable because they're young. And I know how to deal with that and just swat it away and not care about it because I know that has nothing to do with me. It's somebody's own pain that they're going through.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point.
Yeah. Because just like, why would you lash out at somebody unless something like that triggered you? Like, why would you care,
There's a lot of homophobia in the Armenian community that I've struggled to understand where it comes from, whether it's an immigrant thing, whether it's a genocide thing, which I don't really think so, although that's given as justification sometimes, or if it's just a remnant of the patriarchy and toxic masculinity. I'm not really sure, but there seems to be an inordinate amount of homophobia in our community.
Yeah, I'm not sure where it comes from either. I always thought maybe it was like a genocide survivor thing and an immigrant thing. I think there's probably numerous reasons for it, but I also think there tends to be a feeling in the Armenian community of we all have to kind of be a certain way. You know, weddings should be a certain way, children should be brought up a certain way, and like everything needs to be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you know, whereas with American culture and in the diaspora, when people have moved to Western nations, if you want to call it that, it's more about like, yeah, there's a way to do things, but also like you want to do it this way, you go ahead and do it that way. And I think that becomes like a clash because I've heard numerous friends of mine who are gay who've said, and this isn't just Armenian community, it's other immigrant communities who have said like their parents thought, oh, because we moved to America, this is why it happened because Americans are so like free and irresponsible, this is what happened. It's not because you were born this way. It's because we moved to a certain country where, you know, Madonna's on MTV. Oh, that's why it happened, you know? So
no, that's real. People really feel that way that, I mean, I've said this before too, that people have used to tell me like, there are no Armenian gays. I'm like, really? This is like 20 years ago, you know, or more. It just doesn't exist in our community. And I hear that a lot, like you said, across different immigrant cultures.
Yeah, which is just denial. And I think people deep down inside are not that stupid and they know that that's not true. But I think the truth hurts for a lot of people and they'd rather blame it on an exterior reason instead of interior. It's not just that's how you're born. It's, you know, and people are born how they're born. It's, oh, it's got to be this TV show, this country, this person. Like, I've even had messages of people saying, oh, your videos are going to make my kids gay. And I'm like, okay.
I have that power.
Yeah. Yes, that is my power. Like, if I could do that, I would bottle it and sell it to people. Why would I? Like, really? Like, come on. It's just, yeah.
Have you ever had any sort of negative reactions to being half British?
Nothing super negative. And I think that has to do, honestly, with my mother being white. I just think that I think intermarriage is still a big deal in the Armenian community, but for some reason, if you marry a white person, it's like less of a thing. That's just my experience, which is just white privilege, frankly.
Well, there's truth to it because you look Armenian, right? Just like my daughter looks mostly Armenian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we definitely have stronger genetics than the Brits, that's for sure.
I know, and I wanted those blue eyes.
I know, it happens. But her eyes will better adjust to the sun here in California. That's what I tell myself. I'm like, oh, I don't have to wear crazy sunglasses because I got the brown eyes. Yeah, I think if I've had any negative reaction, it's been, oh, like, that's great that your mom is English, but like you do know, like, no matter what, like, you're first and foremost, you're Armenian. Like, almost like you should ignore that side of your culture, like that side of who you are. And just,
oh, interesting.
Yeah, I've had, and it's usually older people who are telling me, like, actually, it's not just older people, because I've had younger people tell me, like, you know, I'll be like, oh, my mom's British. And they're like, yeah, but you look Armenian. I'm like, okay, and? Yeah, but like, you look Armenian, so you're Armenian. I'm like, I am, but also like, what does a British person look like? I mean, come on, like, there are British people who are darker. What does a Brit look like in these days, you know? So
it's really interesting because you can't tell what the intention is. Like, is the intention to erase the half of you that isn't Armenian, or is the intention inclusion? Like, no matter what, you're Armenian, you're one of us.
I think
do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it is hard to tell. I always took it as erasing because it was so aggressive. It wasn't like, oh my God, that's so cool. It was like, okay, but you're this. And it's like, okay, first off, you don't get to decide that. I decide that. Also, you know, if we took my 23andMe, that's not what it says. It does not say 100% Armenian. So, okay. I found the people who are trying to be more inclusive, and again, this is just my interpretation, my emotional response to it, like the vibe I got. The people who are more inclusive about it, it's like, oh, like that's so awesome. Like, tell me about it. Or how did your parents meet? Or like explain that to me. Like, does your mom make any like British food? Like, it becomes more about like they're interested in that rather than, oh, that's nice, but it's got to be this. And you're like,
Got
okay.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think it'd be different if you had blonde hair and blue eyes like your relatives? Half of your relatives?
Things would be very different. Things would be
You think
like,
so?
my life.
What do you think it would be?
My life would be very different if I was blonde with blue eyes.
Well, now, how? How do you think your life would be different?
Well, people would look at me as a white person, not an Armenian person. I wouldn't get, this has only happened a couple times, but I wouldn't get looked at the airport a certain way. And again, I'm not saying I don't feel like I face like racism, because I think Armenians do benefit from some white privilege. Like, we're darker, but we're not like, I think we do benefit from it to some extent.
100%.
Yeah, we definitely do. I never feel like the police are looking at me. Like, I've never experienced that. But I'll tell you what the biggest difference would be if I was blonde hair and blue eyed. So this is something my mom and I had a conversation about recently. My mother is fully an immigrant. She still has a strong British accent. And she said that she has never felt treated like an immigrant, even in the United States, because she's white and she's British. Whereas I am born and raised here. I sound very American. I am very American. And certain parts of the country and the way certain people talk to me is always like, where are you from, though?
Yeah.
Right. I think we've all gotten that, like, no, but where are you originally from? And I feel like white people, even if they're from another country, don't really get that, or don't get it as much. So that's what I mean by my life would be very different.
It's true. I remember, God, this is like a really long time ago when my ex-girlfriend was visiting us and we were watching TV, and there was some shampoo commercial on TV and they had a British accent, and she's from Scotland actually, but she turned to me and she said, "Why is there someone with a British accent selling products to Americans?" And I said, "Oh, because Americans find a British accent to be sophisticated. So somebody wants to convey that something's fancy, they use a British accent." So it makes sense to me that your mom wasn't really treated like an immigrant in the United States, because we kind of, in some parts, look up to that.
Oh yeah, she never, it was always just like, oh, that's so cool. She's so charming and British, And the thing my mom always says is like, Brits usually laugh at that because most British people, Americans assume that all British people are like Kate Middleton and just like, speak so like well-mannered and she's like, most British people are like, oh yeah, and like drunk in like a bar. Like, they don't, most British people sound like Russell Brand instead of Kate Middleton. That's the truth.
More Brits sound like Russell Brand. I'll give you that for sure.
Definitely, yeah. That is definitely more Brits for sure.
Have you ever visited your family in the UK?
Yeah, I've been plenty of time. I actually have a UK passport, so I'm a dual citizen.
You do?
Yeah,
I'm jealous.
Yeah. So I've gone, last time I was there was January 2020, before everything got shut down.
How does that side of your family feel about you being Armenian, or how do they accept or not accept your culture?
They are super chill and super cool. Yeah, I feel like there's never an issue on either side of the family, honestly. Yeah, nobody cared that anybody out married.
Oh, that's unusual. I mean, yeah.
The only thing was when my mom first met my dad. So my mom had gone to Iran to perform, and this was before the revolution, and she had never heard of Iran. She's like, "What the hell is Iran?" And her manager was like, "Oh, it used to be called Persia." And she was like, "Oh, Persia. Okay, that was like the old school name for it." And she got there, met my dad, and when she came back, she's like, "Oh, I met a guy there and I fell in love with him." And my grandpa was like, "Oh, when is Abdul coming on his camp?"
Oh.
Because
sorry, I shouldn't laugh.
No, it's we still laugh about it to this day, because like, obviously, that's
yes.
who he was, and he was, served in World War II. I don't want to make excuses, but that's what it was. But then the minute they met my dad, they loved him. They were like, he's so nice. He's so kind. He's so like lovely. And there was never really an issue from that point on. I don't think they really faced issues until they moved to Glendale, because then it became so Armenian concentrated that it was like, why doesn't your wife speak English? And speak Armenian, and like, why aren't you sending your kids to an Armenian? It became like this pressure of like, again, you need to be this way instead of acknowledging that the children are half British.
I get that all the time. I mean, just last weekend, we went to a kid's birthday party and an older gentleman said, why doesn't your daughter speak more Armenian? Why doesn't she understand? And I was like, I don't know, man, because we talk English at home. I'm like, what do you want from me? But I just feel this massive guilt. Even though I send her to Armenian school, the poor girl, she's only getting it at school. She doesn't really hear Armenian at home. I mean, sorry, I'm going on my own little emotional rant here.
No, it's totally valid. But it's also like, not everybody can afford to send their children to two different schools. Like, that's just not the case.
Really expensive.
Yeah, my parents couldn't afford to send us to, I went to public school. My parents were not like, we can't pull out money and just send you to a private Armenian school or, go to school afterwards. We did extracurriculars, like I got to do drama classes. My brother played every sport. I got to do art classes. That was great. But my parents, like, we can't do that and, Armenian school. And my parents also wanted us to have, like growing up, I had friends of every race and background, which when you're a kid, you don't think about that. They're just your friends. It's not until you're an adult that you're like, oh, wow, like I never realized how diverse my friend group was, because a lot of people don't have that or don't have that exposure.
There's such a difference between those people who have gone to an Armenian private school for their entire schooling experience. At AGBU, they call them lifers, which I think is a terrible term, by the way. It sounds like they're in prison. But, lifers to me means like, okay, I get it. I see both sides of it. There are definite benefits to being in a private school and to being in a school that is like culturally immersive in the culture that you come from, but also it's not really the real world. I toggled back and forth between Armenian private school and American public school, and there's a benefit to being with all different kinds of people from all different kinds of socioeconomic classes as well, not just races, nationalities, and religions, but like that's more of the actual world. I find that a lot of these so-called lifers are, unless their parents or their families make a concerted effort, they're very sheltered.
Yeah.
And it's not good. It's not good.
Yeah, I definitely have seen that too. And and not everybody's has their own experience and everything, but
no, everyone, Andy. No, I'm just kidding.
They're all lifers.
I said this is how it is.
This is what it's like, no questions.
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I definitely think, I agree with you. I think people can do whatever they want for their kids. That's their business. But the world is not just Armenians, and California and LA is not just Armenians. And I mean, like, I'll just use myself as an example. I went to public school my whole life, and, I did have a lot of Armenian friends, but like one of my best friends that I've known since kindergarten is Pakistani. We've known each other since we were 4. And I would not have met him if I had just gone to an Armenian school my whole life, I would not have met him.
Right.
And another one of my like longtime friends is white. I would not have met her if I had gone to an Armenian school only. So I definitely see both sides to it. I do wish that I had the opportunity to go to an Armenian school as a kid and just like because I can't read or write Armenian, and I do speak it, but I really wish it was a lot better than it is. It's easier when you start young. It just sticks in your head. It's harder as you get older to learn a language and to have it stick. So I wish I had that opportunity, but I definitely don't regret having friends from all different backgrounds, socioeconomic status, race, religion. Like, that was an experience that, like, you can't pay for that. That's just, it's priceless.
I agree. And I think it prepares people better. That was a terribly constructed sentence, but people are better prepared to be in the world when they are used to diversity, especially here.
Yeah. I mean, because when you go out into the world and you're working with other people or you're conversing with other people, it's not going to all look a certain way, I definitely see both sides to it. I'm impressed by the people who are able to balance it. Like, one of my friends went to an Armenian school in elementary school, and then his middle school and high school, he went to a private Catholic school, which was very diverse because Catholics are all kinds of people. And that gave him kind of both sides to it. But again, he also had the money to do that. So
mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you hope that people walk away with after experiencing your work, your comedy?
I hope people, after they've seen my work, with this period of time, I hope that people get a laugh, because I think even though things are getting, knock on wood, hopefully better, it's still a crazy time. And I hope that people get some laughter from it, because it is the best medicine. But I hope it also makes people think critically and kind of hold up a mirror, not just to themselves, but to the world around them. And I hope that people also realize that it's not a violent criticism of like, you're wrong. It's just, hey, I am not perfect. You are not perfect. None of us are perfect. And let's have this conversation and acknowledge the reality in a fun way. I think that's my big thing with the world is I can't stand, it makes me so uncomfortable when people can't acknowledge the elephant in the room. Like, that drives me up the wall. And I hate those uncomfortable, like, there's clearly an elephant in the room. Let's just acknowledge it. It's uncomfortable, but let's just acknowledge it and move on. And I think you can acknowledge that with comedy and just going there with it. And I think it makes it easier for people to hopefully acknowledge the truth and the reality of what's going on.
I like that. And also just not to take ourselves that seriously.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's absolutely a big part of it too.
What do you most want Armenians to know?
Just in general?
Yeah, just in general. I've given you a little soapbox. What do you want to tell Armenian people? Dear Armenian people.
That we are no better or worse than anybody else. That we are human. We should be proud of who we are. We should be proud that we're survivors, that we are artists, that we are entrepreneurs, that we do incredible things, that we are a tight-knit community, but that doesn't make us better than anybody else. And we need to, I think one of the problems in the Armenian community is we want people to acknowledge our humanity, which they do need to, especially with what's been going on the last year in Armenia. You have to acknowledge our humanity. We also need to acknowledge other people's humanity within our own community and outside of it. And that means fully embracing multiracial Armenians, fully embracing LGBTQ Armenians, fully embracing Armenians who have married out of their culture, fully embracing Armenians who are of different gender identities, fully embracing Armenians who don't want to get married and have children or don't want to practice Christianity. We cannot ask people to fully acknowledge our humanity if we're not going to do the same thing in return, not just to our community, but to everybody else.
I love it.
Yeah, we'll see if people like that or not.
Well, I think our listeners, to be fair, will.
Yeah, we'll see what messages I get, but whatever.
I've had people sometimes on Instagram say something like, this is an Armenian space, like my own Armenian Enough page. Yeah. Like, you should keep politics out of it. And I'm like, do you listen to my podcast? Because do you not know what I talk about all the time?
Yeah, and the thing with politics, like, I understand, like, it's nice to not always have to talk about politics, and the more boring it is, the better. But everything is political. Like, what does politics mean? Everything's political.
Yes.
Right? And that doesn't mean a certain candidate or political party. But when you talk about water, you're talking about politics. You talk about food, you're talking about politics. Politics is just the systems of how things operate and how we get things done. That's all. And how people deal with each other to get what they want done. That's all politics is. Right? In our own families are political, right? When you're having a discussion with your husband about who's going to do the dishes and who's going to cook, that's a political discussion right there. You're having a negotiation.
Absolutely.
Right? So,
I love the way that you just phrased everything, because I've always believed that, like, you vote with your dollars, your money is vote, your speech is a vote, everything goes towards your values. And when you say political, that's what I think of. You're talking about what your values are.
Yeah.
And I value compassion and inclusivity and community.
Yeah, it's more than just a candidate or a political party. Frankly, that's like the least interesting part of politics to me. It's about just how the world operates and how we are going to talk to each other and negotiate and try to get things done that benefit the most people. That's what it is.
You mentioned something earlier when we were talking about the comments that people left on your page, and you said that it wasn't so much that it affected you, but that you were concerned about what other LGBTQ young Armenians might think or see or feel reading those comments. Is there something that you would want to say to LGBTQ Armenians, particularly the ones who are, young and maybe not quite out yet?
Yeah, I would say nothing's wrong with you. Like Lady Gaga says, God doesn't make mistakes. You are fine. Nothing is wrong with you. You are perfect. You are loved. And even if you're having a hard time right now, I've been there, we've all been there. And just know that things get better as you get older. They really do. It's hard to see it in the moment. It's hard to understand that in the moment because it feels like an eternity, but it does get better. And if you, this is just an open thing to any, you can DM me if you have any questions. If you just need somebody to talk to, I am not a psychiatrist. I can't, there's only so much I can do, but just know that my page is an open place if I'm able to talk. So as best I can, as a non-professional, of course. And I'm just good at giving resources as well. So if you're like, I don't know what to do with this, I'm very good at researching and finding some place for you that you can go to get the help that you need.
Thank you. And I second that. You can also reach out to me and message me, and I promise I will get back to you. Oh, that felt more somber than it needed to for me.
I know. I was like choking up, and I'm like, why am I choking up? I'm like, but I think
because they're suffering. There's so much suffering, and not just the queer Armenian community in the diaspora. That's the safer Armenian community. I really worry about those who are in Armenia and not safe.
Yeah, and I was working with it's a friend of mine. He's a designer on Instagram. His name's Hagop, and he's such an angel. He put together this whole fundraiser to raise money to get this 18-year-old teenager in Armenia who's gay. He's been pretty much kicked out by his family. He's been physically assaulted numerous times, like had to go to the hospital, and the government doesn't care because unfortunately, the government and the culture in Armenia is unbelievably homophobic. It's one of the worst in Europe. And he was able to raise money to get him to come to the US on a student visa and pay for his first semester of college here.
Yes, that was incredible. And I donated to that too. It's at hagop.ig.
Yes.
And it's in his link.
Thing, I believe, it's still an ongoing fundraiser because obviously eventually I want him to stay here and have a, normal life.
It's like I was reading an article this morning it was about the mother of a boy who's trans in Texas. And she was just worried that because of the changes that are being proposed in Texas, that just the fact that she's supporting her son, her child, she can maybe be put in jail or be fined or something like that, which is ridiculous. But all the comments in the article were saying like, why don't you move? Why don't you move? And she came back and she said, you're assuming that I have the financial means to move, and I don't. And that's not really the answer. We need you to help here. So I was just kind of thinking of that in terms of this young man from Armenia. I know that's not the answer for everyone to move here, but I also see the value in saving the people that we can while simultaneously trying to change the way that things are, trying to make life better for queer Armenians in Armenia.
Yeah, and also, he shouldn't have to move. That's the thing.
Right.
Nobody should have to move from where they live because they are threatened, right? Let's just apply that to our own community, going back to the genocide. We shouldn't have to have become a diaspora community, right?
Right.
If we really believe in justice, we shouldn't be telling people, oh, people want to hurt you just because of who you are, even though you're not hurting anybody. Oh, then move. No. Why should we have to move? We didn't do anything. That's such victim shaming. That is so abusive. That is so toxic. And that just enables this stuff to continue because it's telling the abusers look, just keep doing it. We'll tell them to move. That's so jacked up. That is so unbelievably abusive. And we just get rid of that.
And frankly, if all the queer Armenians living in Armenia were to leave, Armenia would be a much poorer place for it.
Well, I mean, you're even seeing that with not even just the LGBTQ community. You're seeing so many people. I have a friend who's living there now temporarily, and she loves it because she loves living there. But she said at this point, unfortunately, she can't see herself living there full time because when she's trying to move up and have opportunity, it keeps getting smacked down because there seems to be this, and this is just her opinion, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
She just feels like, well, if I want to move up, if I want to live my life a certain way, it's not encouraged. So you then get brain drain, where the people who want to, the people with the minds and the talent and the brains, that's great if you want to go there. But if you don't have the culture to cultivate that and the openness, people are going to leave and go somewhere else where they can go, which is, I mean, that's why America has been thriving, because we allow people to come here and do what they want to do.
We need to keep our best and brightest, and we can only do that by being accepting and inviting to folks who don't fit the boxes.
Yeah, it's very strange because Armenians are some of the most hospitable people on the planet. Friends of mine who are not even Armenian, if they have somebody pass away, like they've seen, you know, their friends' parents, like they bring so much food. They're there for you. Like if somebody passes away in the Armenian community, like you're taken care of for a month. People have got your back. We are some of the most hospitable, loving, kind, generous people. And I think we should just apply that to everyone, you know? Like why can't we apply that to everybody?
We can.
Yeah.
I'm going to pivot now to our 5 fun questions because I don't want to I don't want to be depressed. No. So now we have our 5 fun questions. Oh. I don't know if you've listened to the podcast or not, but hopefully you haven't practiced any of these. Number 1, what is your favorite Armenian food?
Oh my God, that's so hard.
Do.
I know, seriously. I'm like, why am I putting pressure on myself over this? My favorite Armenian food, my favorite sweet Armenian food is nazuk, when it has the walnuts in it. I love it by itself, but when it has the walnuts, that takes it to a whole nother level. Yeah, nazuk, and then probably, I mean, just good. Like, if you just make dope kebab, like a dope kebab night, I'm happy. Like,
that's funny.
To go. Like, just great horabats, I'm good to go.
You know, not a lot of people say pick sweet things as their favorite Armenian food, so that's pretty cool.
I love nazuk. Ugh, it's so good.
Do you understand Western and Eastern Armenian?
I understand it better now because I have a lot of friends who are Berutsi, like Berutahai. So I've picked it up a little bit, but there's still times when like their parents will speak to me and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I don't know what's happening. I don't get it. I still don't get the P with Parev, but I understand it definitely much better. I understand it better now.
What is the most American thing about you?
Ooh, that is such a good question. I think probably that I'm really, really opinionated and really loud about it. I feel like...
Really? You think that that's American?
I do think it is. I think Americans are very... this is how I feel and that's that. And I think that's a very American thing. I think a lot of countries think that we're like dicks because of that, but that's just our culture. We're very like, this is how you feel and your freedom of speech. I think that's very much, that's probably the most American thing about me is I'm like, this is how I feel and you don't like it, then oh well.
All right. What's the most Armenian thing about you?
My temper, probably.
Wow. Okay.
My temper, yeah. I would say my temper. And I'm also very much the type of person where, like, I feel like Armenians are, and I don't mean this in a bad way, Armenians are a mafia culture, and I don't mean that in a bad way. What I mean by that is, once you're in, like, they got your back.
I can see that.
And that's kind of how I am with my friends. Like, once you're, like, my friend, and once we are tight, we're, like, I got your back kind of thing, so.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about how I am with friendships, and I'm like, no, you're always, like, you can always be kicked out of my club. I say that having friends for 30 and 40 years, but like I just feel like, nope, you can always go too far.
So you're the mafia person who would make a plea deal with the FBI then.
Hey, I think you just called me a rat.
I mean, hey, look, if I was in your position, I would do it too. Like, listen, guys, if you're ever arrested, take the plea deal.
All right. Do you have a favorite Armenian celebrity?
Cher, obviously. I mean, Cher, 100%.
That was a no-brainer.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, she's like icon, like absolute icon, Oscar winner. Like, how can you not pick Cher?
No, she's amazing on so many different levels.
Yeah, and always, she always was like herself. And like the revolutionary thing about her is when she became famous in the 60s, beauty was a certain way, right? It was like the twiggy, blonde, blue-eyed thing. And she was just like this Armenian, like she looks very Armenian. And she just was like, this is who I am. And I'm not going to change the way I mean, obviously she's had plastic surgery, but like she never tried to make herself not look Armenian. She just fully was like, this is how I look. I'm going to dress a certain way. And like just always was herself and didn't apologize for it. And I think that's amazing.
Oh, absolutely. And she's still so relevant. Like, I mean, decades and decades. And she's Wow, she's amazing.
Yeah.
Lastly, and most importantly, do you know how to read Armenian coffee cups?
I do, and I'll tell you why. My aunt taught me, and this is what she told me. This is going to be possibly a little controversial, but I feel like we should just talk about it.
Okay.
So she was reading my coffee cup one day, and I asked her how she did it, and she was about to explain it, and she stopped and she went, "Andy, this is all fake." She's like, "I'm just making things up." She's like, "I might look at this and see a rabbit, and I'll say a rabbit means this, and my daughter will say it's not a rabbit, it's a fox, and it means something else." So yes, I do know how to read Armenian coffee cups.
Okay, you know that I do not believe in faking it. Like, I think that if you look at a coffee cup and you think you're saying something like, I'm just going to fake it and say whatever, I think you're actually tuning into something and saying something that's real.
Okay. So if we were like having Nazuk and Golfe right now, and I looked at your coffee cup and I saw, I don't know, a dragon, and I thought a dragon means good luck, you think that that means I'm actually tuning into something?
Yeah, I think you can only think that you're faking. I mean, you can obviously try to say something outrageous, but I think if you're, giving it the old college try and you look at an Armenian coffee cup and say something, even if you think you don't understand where it's coming from, I think you're tapping into something real.
Okay. Well, then that's what my aunt was. That's essentially what she was saying. If she sees something that looks like a rabbit, she'll say a rabbit. She won't be like, "Oh, I see a rabbit," if she doesn't see one. So I never thought of it that way. I just always assumed like you just see something and that's how you interpret it. But I guess it is all however you interpret it. So, okay. So
I mean, having said that, I do take it with a big grain of salt because I'm one of these people that, like, if you tell me something bad or something that I disagree with, it's instantly dismissed, but it doesn't affect all the other great things that you say. I can accept those.
Yeah. And I guess because it's kind of like vague in the eye of the beholder, that kind of makes it a little, I guess that does make it a little better because I've gone to like American psychics who are like, "Oh, you're going to have an issue with your car registration." I was like, at that time, I was like, "I don't have a car, so I don't know what you're talking about." I'm like, "Girl, you got too specific, and now you've just completely messed it up."
Yes, you can't do that. I went to this psychic medium once and I was trying to communicate with my mom who passed away nearly 7 years ago now. And this woman was so bad. Honestly, if she had just guessed, she would have maybe gotten a couple of things right. But She was like, my mom's name is Alicia, right? So she was like, "Your mother's name, I'm going to try to get her name." And I'm like thinking it, like, get it. This is what I'm sending it to you telepathically. Yeah. And she's like, "Is it an M? Does it start with an M?" I'm like, "No." And she goes, "Well, maybe it's just M for mom." And I was like, "Really, lady?
Oh my God. Okay.
M for mom? Really?"
Defund her. She's defunded by...
Oh, some people are just so terrible. Anyway, total tangent. But if you drink Armenian coffee, and actually please do drink a cup and turn it over and take some photos and send it to us so that we can put it up on our Instagram.
I will.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for talking to me and coming on the show. It was really fun.
Thank you so much. This was a great conversation. I really appreciate you asking me to come on.
You can reach Andy on Instagram at Andy Kenareki. No dashes, no underscores, just the full name. And you can subscribe to his YouTube channel, Andy K Comedy. As always, all of his info will be in the show notes for this episode. If you value the types of conversations we bring you, please consider supporting us through Patreon, where you have access to behind-the-scenes info, cutting room floor clips, and what I'm working on next. And of course, I'll continue to publicly acknowledge and thank our Patreon supporters of $5 or more. So if you like hearing your name on the air, or you've been meaning to support Armenian enough but haven't gotten around to it yet, this would be the perfect time to do so. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, remember that you are always more than enough.